Welcome back. So for today's arts and craft lesson, we're going to talk about modding the KZ ZSN Pro X. So like I talked about during the review, it's a bit bright. It's definitely a lot bright for certain people who are very sensitive to higher end treble. And it's not a super pleasing treble either because it's got this KZ house sound, which also annoys people. So something that I've talked about a couple times, and I won't take any credit for any of this, but an article I've talked about before is Kobe Okaya's blog post on TRN VX modding, and he talks about all these techniques about bringing down treble that annoys you, different variations and methods of how to address that, and especially if you're a KZ fan, if you follow the KZ thread on HeadFi, you know that Slater talks about Micropore and using foam inserts as well. So again, these guys really kind of originated this, and I just want to talk about my experience with this because I think it helped. So let me just kind of jump into the gist of it. So 3M Micropore tape, Micropore 3M. So it's really basic. It's almost this, you can pretty much see through it, but it's a very thin porous surgical tape designed to be adhesive yet not pull off the hairs or your skin. So sort of a good speaker filter material, and that's the gist of what you really want to do. Is you want to take a small bit of tape and cover a portion of your grill, and that will reduce the sound energy coming from the BAs pointed at your ears into the filter, damping it a little bit and easing up on the treble a little bit. So that's the gist of it. So he recommends doing this kind of inset square method, and to be honest, I tried that, and on the ZSN Pro X, I didn't quite get enough reduction, so I kept on doing bigger and bigger pieces, and I sort of finally kind of gave up and just did this. I'm just going to put one piece of Micropore tape that covers the whole grill, and so I get that. It's probably better to leave a hole, and I figured I would go back and, poke a hole in a couple holes of the grill if, I really wanted to, but I ended up doing this kind of just to try it, and it kind of worked for me. So the gist of what happens when you do this is you notice this reduction in treble. So some of those songs that you thought were super bright, they're kind of knocked down a notch, and he says it knocks it down a couple decibels. That's probably what it does. This is probably a little more because it covered the whole grill, but it kind of worked for me. So I figured if I could knock down the treble a little bit, I would switch to copper cable. Maybe that would give me some of the bass that I was missing when I originally did the review. Just bring a little more balance, knock this down a little bit, bring this up a little bit. So the first time I tried this with the tape covering the entire grill with a copper cable, there was so much bass that it was kind of off the scale. I don't exactly know. I think there's probably a reason why you don't cover the whole grill, because it sort of affected, it's almost a resonant bass. It took a very quick decay bass and made it sort of persistent. So you get this very bassy, consistent, persistent sound, which isn't very much like the Pro X. So I couldn't really deal with the copper cable and doing the mod like this, so I went back to this normal silver cable, and then we were kind of back to you got a little bit more shine back on the treble, so knocked it down a little bit. This kind of brought back the detail a little bit. On this, it's kind of a very darker sound. This kind of brought it back more in line with that signature on the ZSN Pro X, so a little bit sharper, a little shinier. The vocals sounded a little better, but not quite as bright as they were before. On the bass side, it sort of did elevate the bass a little bit, even with this cable. And for me, it was about the right sound. It's probably going to be too bassy for a lot of people. I would definitely, if you're going to go down this mod, definitely poke a hole in the tape on one of these. I mean, you can kind of see it is covering the grill, but you could pretty much see every hole through the grill. So and I stretched it a little bit. So It's definitely a trial and error. Adjusting this, knocking down the treble a little bit. The bass is going to be increased a little bit. How do you get that right balance of the detail in the vocals with the bass, with the treble knocked down? So I was kind of going back and forth on these cables, the tape, holes, how many holes are covered, and this is kind of where I ended up. But I do suggest going down this road. It's just not a perfect recipe. Like, don't reproduce, putting tape over the whole grill and expect it to sound awesome, because I'm going to tell you, it probably sounds a little too bassy for most people. It kind of brought the signature a little out of whack a little again, where it was, almost neutral and a little bright. Now it almost feels a little more V-shaped, and you lose some of that fast decay bass that these new drivers were really showing. So not perfect. It kind of got me into the ballpark of, yeah, this is pretty reasonable, and I think if I spent more time on it, I could probably get it to really where I really had that nice balance of bringing the bass up a little bit, having enough treble that it sounded nice, and not losing any detail in the vocals. So that's it. Just a quick, give this a try. Go to your local pharmacy, drugstore, see if you can find some 3M Micropore surgical tape. Try another copper cable with caution that it might give you a little too much, or you're gonna have to poke holes in the grill, one of those two, or switch back to the silver cable like I did. So some things to try, especially for you guys who have the ZSN Pro X on order. Gives you some time to go pick up some tape, some scissors, and start really thinking about addressing this problem. Or maybe it's not going to be a problem at all when you get it, but I would still give it a try, because it definitely brings a new sound to the ZSN Pro X. So that's it. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.